Paramashiva's message directly from Kailas sir. Today I want to bring the attention of the whole world to this continuous Hindu Holocaust happening in India and many countries, especially in India. Understand? First thing I wanted to put this on record. I strongly condemn mob lynching of two my own sampradaya. Sadhus belong to Akhada Parishat, Panch Dasanam, Juna Akhada Sadhus, and the assistant driver of those sadhus. All three brutally lynched by terrorist mob in Maharashtra's Palghar. India's independence has no way made we sadhus safe. Hindu leaders, Hindu sadhus getting mob lynched, killed is 1,000-year-old regular happening, and India's independence has no way made us safe or stopped this continuous persecution. O Hindus all over the world, I beg you all with humbleness, please wake up to this truth. Please wake up to this reality. Please understand the next few points I am going to express. First thing, fortunately we got the video of the sadhus getting lynched and killed by the terrorist gang. If we did not get this video, by now media would have produced morphed video of these sadhus raping some girl, and they would have created a either illegal affair or rapist story around these sadhus and justified their killing. I tell you, neither India's mass media cult nor India's entertainment industry is honest or basic moral, basic integrated to the truth. I tell you, the whole ecosystem created by the India's mass media cult and Indian entertainment industry, whether cinema or television, continuously projecting Hindu sadhus, Hindu leaders as negative role. Continuously Hindu sadhus and Hindu leaders and the Hindu way of dressing up is projected as villains, characterless, cheap comedians, so much of hate speech directly, indirectly, subtly and brutally the grand narrative, Hindu leaders and Hindu sadhus are anti-social, illegal, immoral, need to be eliminated as early as possible. The grand narrative is already built so strongly. Whether Thirubuvanam Ramalingam in Tamil Nadu or yesterday the sadhus killed in Palghar, Kalpavriksha Giriji Maharaj, Sushil Giriji Maharaj and their driver, all three were killed, brutally being beaten by the terrorist gang. But I am telling you, O Hindus, we need to wake up to this. We need to bring attention of the whole world. All the human rights organizations all over the world should know what is being done to Hindu sadhus and Hindu leaders and Hindu thinkers. Outside India, constantly Hindus are projected as aggressors and terrorists by Indian media. Understand this dangerous ecosystem built in India by mass media cult and the entertainment industry. The funding, training and the whole ecosystem of mass media cult and entertainment industry, television, TV serials and cinema. The whole ecosystem is absolutely anti-Hindu. Look at any movie, villain. The negative characters will have Hindu symbols brightly established, presented on their bodies. But never heroes. Heroes will not have any symbol of Hinduism. If you see the percentage, less than 1% only heroes will be wearing Hindu symbols. 99% only villains will be having Hindu symbols. Constantly brainwashing the society. Hindu sadhus are criminals and worst. Grand narrative is built against Hindu sadhus and Hindu thinkers, Hindu leaders. If we did not get the video of Thirubuvanam Ramalingam, getting threatened and people forcing him to convert, move away from Hinduism. If we did not get that video, within few hours of his murder, Tamil Nadu media houses would have morphed and produced some videos, either Thirubuvanam Ramalingam having some illegal affairs or real estate problems or money issue, something they would have produced and changed the whole murder into some fight between two people and he got murdered. Maybe money issue, a real estate land issue or illegal affair issue. I am telling you, myself personally and my sannyasis, Nityananda order, sannyasis, brahmacharis, devotees, we have faced this mob lynching for last 20 years, and I know how painful it is and terrorizing. I am telling you, the ecosystem in India is such. Whether Tribhuvanam Ramalingam murder or this yesterday two sadhus and one of his assistant, their assistants, driver, all three getting mob lynched, killed brutally. None of these murders neither the world will remember nor there will be any justice. Nobody will be convicted. That is the way things happen, I tell you. Or two minimum. I am collecting the statistics, data, analyzing. Literally, 99.9% will go scot-free. The whole ecosystem is such. I tell you, unless we Hindus wake up to this truth and get the international attention, politicians will have their own priorities. Even politicians are not going to attend to you. Politicians will have their priorities. Hindus, wake up. Politicians are not going to attend to you unless you get the international attention to this continuous Hindu Holocaust. I tell you, because I myself have gone through this multiple times. See, now these people who are arrested for this Hindu sadhus mob lynching, they will come out in bail in next few days. Actually, if we did not get this video, nobody would have been arrested. They would have made another video, morphed video of those sadhus either having illegal affair or raping somebody or some other illegal immoral activity, and they would have the sadhus would have been painted by the media as illegal, immoral, antisocial element, and the whole story would have ended there. Now, even with this video, I am telling you how things will go. I have seen from first-hand experience, I am telling you how things will go. The people who killed him, and I have a serious doubt, the exact conspirators would not have even been arrested. Even if they are arrested, they will get bail and come out, and neither they will be convicted nor they will suffer any loss in their life, but the fear created among the Hindu sadhus and Hindu leaders, the way they are terrorized, neither the next generation will have confidence to take up Hindu sannyas life, think for Hinduism, nor the existing ashrams and leaders will try to be active. They will all just decimate because of the amount of hate speech, fear the Hindus need to face. I tell you, I have faced all this for last 20 years. Personally, and my sadhus and my sannyasis. Rich background, successful youth took up sannyas to serve the society. We Hindus, when we are inspired, we become sadhus, not terrorists. In some religion, when people get over-inspired by their religion, they become missionaries and convert others. In some religion, when they get over-inspired by their religion, they become terrorists and kill others. In Hinduism, when we become over-inspired, we become sadhus and start meditating to achieve enlightenment. My sadhus, people, the successful youngsters who came to my organization, my sangha, sadhus and householders, I know my disciples and devotees, how they are brutally beaten. And after this whole mob lynching, whether the person is alive or dead, nobody, people who have, the terrorists who have attacked us, terrorists who killed, they will not suffer. They will not be punished. I am seeing this last 20 years. One of my Kailasavasi, Sambhavananda, he literally lost his eyes in Tiruvarur when the mob lynched him. He is from very rich family. He has left everything, came to Kailasa to serve the Hinduism with wife and son, whole family. I am giving you one name. I can give you the long list. Sri Yogananda. Long list. Parabrahmananda. My female sannyasis, female monks. I am telling you, no terrorist who attacked us for last 20 years is convicted. Last 20 years we are facing mob lynching. Hundreds of mob lynching. Whether our sadhus survived the mob lynching or died, the terrorist gang, not a single fellow is convicted till now. But already our organization has collapsed. The people who came to serve Hinduism and the whole world, they lost confidence, and the next generation is terrorized. The amount of hate speech media does on Hindu sadhus and Hindu leaders. Oh Hindus, wake up and get the international attention, or within next 20 years, your sons, daughters and your next generation will not be Hindus. They will not even remember you guys. If they remember you guys, they will be ashamed of you, never remembering you guys with pride. Understand, already the educated Hindus are brainwashed. They are ashamed of our past. They are neither told the right Hindu history, nor they are allowed to feel the great contribution of Hindus. We are made to feel ashamed of our past by absolute lies and brainwashing in every level, whether mass media cult or cinema or TV, or the print media, brainwashing Hindus and the whole world against Hinduism. So much of hate speech. And I am telling you, including school books, so much of hate speech, distorted history, so much of poison dumped on Hindus. I tell you, for this giving voice today, if I was available for Indian police, I will be arrested within 24 hours. I have not mentioned any individual pointing fingers. I have not spoken anything against any community, any religion, anybody. I am just bringing the whole world's attention for this continuous Hindu Holocaust and mob lynching happening against Hindu sadhus and Hindu leaders. Just for this, they would have arrested me if I was available. Fortunately, by Paramashiva's grace, I am not available to them as on now. And Paramashiva is protecting me. Kalabhairava is protecting me. I will never be available for them anymore. If I was available to them just for this speech, just for this, they would have arrested me. If possible, they would have handed over me to a mob and the mob would have killed me. Arey, they have done this so many times. Fortunately, I am not dead. Police has handed over me to mob. We have enough evidence. When they have not handed over, they attempted to kill me. I have enough evidence. Police attempted to kill me, to eliminate me. I sincerely pray to Paramashiva to give Satgadi, space in Kailaya, Shivaloka Padavi for Kalpavriksha Giri Maharaj and Sushil Giri Maharaj and their assistant driver, all three. Kalpavriksha Giri Maharaj is 70-year-old sadhu. If you see that video, how brutally he is being killed. I humbly request all Hindus, please wake up. Let us bring the world's attention on this continuous mob lynching of Hindu sadhus and Hindu leaders by the terrorist gang all over India continuously. If we don't bring international attention, politicians are not even going to wake up to this truth. Politicians will have their own priorities. The whole ecosystem, media, entertainment industry, officials, including police, politicians, lawmakers, all the decision makers are absolutely brainwashed against Hinduism, Hindu sadhus and Hindu leaders, Hindu thinkers. The whole ecosystem carries the grand narrative against Hinduism. Already, Hindu sadhus are painted as anti-social elements in India. Don't try to come and defend here using some excuses or few exemption Hindu leaders. Understand, exemptions are not rule. As a rule, Hindu sadhus and Hindu thinkers, Hindu leaders are painted as anti-social elements and terrorists doing every illegal activity. That is the way they are painted. One or two exemptions does not mean the grand narrative the media built, the anti-Hindu grand narrative media built doesn't exist. Understand this. The Indian mass media cult and cinema industry, whether Bollywood or Dollywood or Bollywood or Sandalwood or all, the whole cinema industry in India, heavily funded by anti-Hindu elements, and they have successfully done the continuous hate speech at least for last 50 years. And the poison they emitted and the brainwashing they have done has gone so deep, even Hindus are feeling ashamed about their existence. When I grew up, seeing people wearing the Hindu marks in the regular lifestyle, the day-to-day life, used to be 90% of the people's forehead. Now, it is less than 3% people wearing the Hindu symbols on their forehead in Indian society. People are ashamed to show themselves as Hindus. Sadhus are terrorized. They have to constantly live in fear. Hindus, wake up. Wake up. Just getting one job, getting married, 2 kids and 1 house, and a good salary is not life. Hindu youth is getting brainwashed. Just that small little success is all life. And few courageous people who take up this sadhu life to keep Hindu culture alive are terrorized, and absolutely they have to face lawfare, they have to face so much of hate speech and so much of poisoning. Finally they are killed, eliminated. And I am telling you, in few days nobody will remember this lynching and nobody will be punished for this. I have seen this last 20 years. Not a single fellow, not a single terrorist who damaged, attacked our Sangha Hindus, damaged our properties, killed our Kailasavasis, devotees, disciples. No one, no criminal, no terrorist was punished. It is 20 years. Now, I am facing this. Police supports those terrorist gang and those criminals. So much I have gone through and my Sangha has gone through. We have done tyaga of everything, and today again 2 sadhus and one of their assistant driver, they belong to my sampradaya. They belong to Akada Parishad, the 13 Akadas which we belong to. Every Hindu sannyasi, brahmachari, balasant should know your brother, 2 of your brothers, 3, because the assistant is killed just because he is the driver of those sadhus. Nilesh Telgani, his name. 3 of our brothers are killed. 2 sadhus and 1 grihastha. 3 of our brothers are killed in mob lynching brutally. I sincerely request all Hindus, please wake up. Let us get the international attention to this Hindu Holocaust continuously happening in India and other places, other countries too. Save Hindus. This anti-Hindu media is not going to stop till the last Hindu is killed and eliminated. And after they kill that last Hindu, the story also will be, he was responsible to get killed. He was anti-social and anti-humanity, so he was killed. Let us stop this Hindu Holocaust. Save Hindus. I tell you, oh Hindus, Hindu sadhus, if you guys keep quiet, that same terrorist gang which killed the sadhus yesterday. They are not going to keep quiet. They are going to come to you next. Don't think, oh, they have not attacked my ashram. They are going to come to you next. When Shankaracharya was getting attacked, lawfare and all the other harassments and abuse, other organizations, oh, it is their mutt, let them deal, let the Brahmins deal, it is not our responsibility. The Shaivite mutts keep quiet. When the Shaivite mutts are attacked, the Brahmins, oh, that is their Saivavala's responsibility, not ours, they keep quiet. When Asaram Babu is attacked and their organization is destroyed and the lawfare happens against him and they are just decimated, terrorized and destroyed, other organizations think, oh, it is their organizations, not our problem. The same gang is going to now attack next to you. They are taking out one by one. When Sant Rampal gets attacked, the other organizations, oh, it is not ours, their organization. Maybe something wrong would have been done. I tell you, yesterday, what has happened? Mob lynching of Kalpavriksha Giri Maharaj, Sushil Giri Maharaj, Nilesh Telgane. In this, the media is little late. They have not yet released any video of showing, morphing and showing the sadhus raped some girl or did some illegal activity, and they have not yet produced and shown. Usually, they do that first. It's a very clear plan. First thing, they will show that that person is anti-social. Then they will do mob lynching. I don't know how they missed this time their plan. Maybe the video got deleted somewhere when they did morphing. And I tell you, they will dilute even this news. And they will try to show these three people as thieves or antisocial elements. It is a clear, like a cookie cutter. It's a clear methodology. First, they will show how they made Asaram Babu illegitimate by putting a false accusation, false case on him, and destroyed literally his whole Sangha, which is one of the biggest, strongest backbone of Hinduism. And I am telling you, it is absolute false case. Asaram Babu was framed. They were framing him. Finally, they caught him in one false case. Fortunately, by the grace of Paramashiva and Mahakala Bhairava, I saved myself before they could finish me off. Whether legally or illegally, they would have finished me off if I was available for them. Fortunately, with the grace of Paramashiva and the protection of Kala Bhairava, I saved myself. Kala Bhairava saved me. That's the truth. He gave me the clear understanding and knowledge, intelligence that what is happening on us is a war. It is not some, oh, we have done some crime and it's a prosecution. No, it's a persecution. I want all my devotees, I request all my devotees, humbly, please spend little time. Let us bring international attention to this continuous mob lynching of Hindu sadhus and Hindu leaders, this continuous Hindu Holocaust happening in India and elsewhere. It is not just human rights violation, it is a Holocaust. It's Hindu genocide. You do not know how that whole area Hindus will be terrorized. This is the way the Hindu ashrams, organizations, mutts, their properties are grabbed. They are terrorized. And even now media is telling these three are thieves beaten to death by villagers in Maharashtra's Palghar district. I tell you, this anti-Hindu think tank, first they will usually create some false evidence to show that leader or a sadhu is an antisocial element. How they did it on me? First, March 2nd, they will release a video. They released a video showing I am a rapist. And then March 4th, they file a false FIR, false case, saying I am a rapist and pervert. Funny thing, they release a morph video on me and then they say I hurt the Hindu sentiments. They filed a case on me for hurting the Hindu sentiments. Brutally my ashrams were burnt and attacked and destroyed. Fortunately, some of my sannyasis gave their life and saved me. My quarters where I was staying, that hut, the traditional thatch roof, they pushed me, the terrorist gang pushed me inside that hut, putting the fire for the hut, knowing that I cannot get out. They locked the door from outside. This whole thing is being shown in live in national televisions. And police standing not to protect me, to take care none of my disciples come and put the fire off or save me. All my sadhus, my devotees were rushing to protect me, to put the fire off, were stopped by the police. Live relay is happening. This is shown live in national televisions. Police is there. Police handing me over literally to the terrorist gang to kill me. Fortunately, two of my sadhus broke the window using their bare hands and pulled me out through the backside and took me out, safeguarded me. That is why I am here now sitting in front of you all and talking. If not, by March 4th, the news would have been released in sex scandal because of the illegal, immoral, anti-social activities. The social leaders, responsible mob killed Nityananda. Over the news. And not a single one would have been convicted or punished. The most funny thing is, even now, majority of the Hindus don't believe there's a war going on them. That is the most funny thing. They are brainwashed so thoroughly by the anti-Hindu media, the mass media cult and entertainment industry cult. Cinema cult of India, cinema cult of India, entertainment industry cult of India, print media cult of India, social media cult of India, mass media cult of India has brainwashed Hindus. Still, the majority of Hindus don't realize there's a war going on them. One by one, their leaders are eliminated. Their sadhus are killed. The next generation is not coming up to live the sannyas life or think for Hinduism. And even people who have taken up the Hindu sannyas life are thinking for Hinduism, the Hindu leaders, they are silenced. Politely, they just slow down, melt down, just collapse and live in one corner and die. They are separated from the mainstream Hindus, singling them out and eliminating them using hate speech, defamation, lawfare, persecution, ultimately mob lynching. Done. Police uses mob lynching to eliminate Hindu sadhus and Hindu leaders. I can show you photographs and video records and enough evidence. And even when they put me in my room and locked the room outside and put fire and attempting to burn me alive, actually, as far as they are concerned, they burnt me alive. That's the truth. Kalabhairava saved me. Paramashiva saved me. When they literally murdered me, they were trying to show as if it is some angry villagers try to burn the ashram. No, it is an organized, planned terrorist mob. Came with petrol bombs and everything needed to burn the ashram and kill me. Ordinary villages, local villages will not have access to all these explosives and other materials. which was used in attacking an attempt to kill me. Whatever items used is not available for common man or the local villagers. It was a planned conspiracy. Because every face in the terrorist gang, not a single person is a local face. We have video records. They were brought from somewhere, very organized way in vehicle, with all the weapons and everything needed, explosives and everything, to kill me. And I am telling you, it is not spontaneous anger shown as protest and some attack, innocent spontaneous attack. No, it's a planned terrorist attack. I have faced this multiple times in multiple states of India. North, south, east to west. Me and my Sangha has faced. How they kill Hindu sadhus and distort the whole story. Because media is in their hands. They are going to tell the story, narrative now. When I moved out of the Indian society, I was asked by one person, Swamiji, not to get mob lynched and killed, not to get killed, you moved out of the Indian society, we understand. What is the guarantee now? They will not, those people who are trying to kill you will not reach you where you are and eliminate you. I tell you honestly, the people who are trying to kill me are international mafia. They have enough, they have long hands to reach wherever I am. But at least they cannot twist the story. If they kill me, they will have to face the law. They cannot twist the story. Oh, because of some illegal affairs or some illegal activity, antisocial activity, Nityananda was killed. They cannot twist the story. At least world will know the story. That's the reason I moved out of Indian society. Not making myself available to Indian police. See the video, how the police is handing over that sadhu to the terrorist gang. They have done that to me. I am telling you, multiple times. By Paramashiva's grace, Kalabhairava's grace, I am still alive. Otherwise, the number of mob lynching attacks I have faced and multiple way of poisoning they have done already. Just by Paramashiva's grace, Kalabhairava's protection, I am still alive. I want to assure all my devotees and disciples and Hindus, with the grace of Paramashiva and the protection of Mahakala Bhairava, I will be alive at least to tell this story to the world, to bring the international attention. Even now, Indian police want me there, not for any prosecution. They will hand me over to mob. So the terrorist mob will kill me, finish me off, and the next day they will just spread the news. Oh, because of his He's antisocial, so people are angry and they killed him. That's all. They'll finish the whole thing. They will close the file. Nobody will be convicted. That police officer may get promotion. And those fellows who killed, they will get biryani and good feast, maybe few days in jail. And once they come out in bail, they will be rewarded. They will become heroes. For that only, Indian police is trying to get me. I am telling you, court is ordering I should have my passport and freedom to travel till the cases are coming to a conclusion. And I know for sure, legally they cannot convict me. It's a false case. But using the system, the police is not giving me my passport. They are not renewing my passport because they want me there so that I can be killed in some mob lynching. What can I do? I have no way to get any justice. See, court is saying I should be having my passport and I should have the freedom to travel. And simply the passport officer is saying, no, I will not renew. All right, if I go to the court and get one more order, again they are not going to follow because already court order is there. Understand, if you still think, oh Hindus, wake up, if you still think Indian police follows the court orders and law and order, you are fool. You are fool. You are getting cheated and brainwashed. I will show you, I have enough evidence. Let me give the evidence today, I will put it out. Court has clearly said, I should have my passport and freedom to travel all over the world till the cases are disposed. And I have not missed a single court hearing till that time. And suddenly one day, when I went for renewing my passport, they said, no, we will not renew. And only few months left for that passport to expire. And our legal team is telling, Swamiji, we have a court order that you should be having your passport and freedom to travel. Now, what is the solution? Police is saying, no, we will not renew your passport. I went to passport office twice and met the top officials in Bangalore. Twice I went personally. I have all the evidence. And we submitted the court order. They said, no, we will not renew. What is the solution? No solution. What is the only solution? If I go to the court again and get one more order, again they are not going to follow the court order. So by the time my passport will be expired, so it is easy to kill me inside India, doing mob lynching. All they need is just get me somewhere. See, they will invite me to some temple, Kumbhabhishekam, somewhere I will have to come out. I cannot be just hiding inside the room. I have to do some Hindu work. So if I come out at some time, at some spot, allow the terrorists or catch me and hand over me to the terrorists, they will finish me off. I have suffered this mob lynching attacks personally and my Sangha. And these 3 people who are killed yesterday are literally my Sangha. Same Sampradaya. They belong to the same Akada Parishad. 13 Akkadas form Akkada Parishad. They belong to Juna Akkada, which is part of Akkada Parishad, which is part of our Sangha. And the media is trying to project them as thieves and antisocial elements and child lifters. Oh God, what all? Even if they are thieves and child lifters, take them to court and do prosecution. Why are you handing them over to the terrorist gang and mob lynching without any investigation? Then why court? Court orders are not followed. Oh Hindus, wake up. Whole ecosystem is only to destroy Hindus. The whole ecosystem, whether police or media, anything, is only to terrorize Hindus, that's all. If I was in Indian society, available for Indian society now, for this speech, they would have arrested me and handed me over to the mob, terrorist mob. And within next 24 hours, the news will come, oh, he was antisocial and all the stories. They would have convicted me and then said, oh, because of that, he was killed by the responsible social people and the local villagers killed him. When we recovered all the items those terrorist gangs were using to destroy our whole ashram and kill our sadhus and myself, none of those items are locally available or the local villages have access to any of those items. It was all planned, conspired and brought from outside. The terrorist gang brought with them. Once again, I humbly request all my devotees, disciples, sadhus, sannyasis, practicing, living Hindus, please wake up to this truth. India need to wake up to this truth. Hindus need to wake up to this truth. Oh Hindus, please wake up. Let us bring international attention to this Hindu Holocaust continuously happening. Before we go about with our day-to-day activities, let us spend a little time and bring the international attention to this Hindu Holocaust happening. And do you know funny thing? After few of my sannyasis have sneaked me out of that burning hut and saved me, once the whole hut was burnt, everything was down, police and that media fellows, those terrorist gang mob, entering into that area and searching for my dead body. When they did not find my dead body, they spreading the news, oh, he's a black magician, he just disappeared, using his black magic powers. They create again one more false narrative and dump so much of hatred and poison. I tell you, Hindu leaders and Hindu sadhus inside India will not be able to raise their voice. They will be brutally destroyed. Only the international Hindus need to stand up and make international community understand this Hindu Holocaust, and let us bring this Hindu Holocaust to the international attention. Please let us do. Hindus outside India, please, I humbly request you all, let us bring international attention to this Hindu Holocaust. Let's bring this Hindu Holocaust to international attention. That is the only way we can save ourselves. The way we Hindus are being disorganized, we are minority internationally by number and the way we are disorganized in both the ways. Internationally, we are minorities. Inside India, the way we are disorganized, we are minorities. Minority or majority should not be decided based on the number, but based on how organized they are. Ideologically, and different sampradayas and different caste, community, creed, language, because of all this, we are small groups. So we are actually minorities. And the so-called minority community is very well organized. The terrorist gang which came to destroy our ashram and destroyed our ashram, robbed our properties, killed, attempted to kill all of us, boldly giving press meet in national media. Because the whole ecosystem is anti-Hindu. They dump so much poison. On Hindus and Hindu sadhus and Hindu leaders. I sincerely request Hindus living outside India, please Let's take this Hindu Holocaust happening in India and other nations to international community's attention, including United Nations. World need to know what Hindus are going through. Hate speech, lawfare, and mob lynching, continuous persecution, this whole Hindu Holocaust, Hindu genocide happening, need to be told to the world. International human rights community, including United Nations, need to know this. We need to bring attention of the United Nations and international human rights organizations, international community to this Hindu Holocaust. We need to bring the attention of international human rights organizations and United Nations to this Hindu Holocaust and mob lynching happening continuously in India and elsewhere. I have so much more to tell. But I have to be in so much fear even now to utter every single word so carefully. Because now what kind of cases they will file on me, I don't know. Fake cases, false cases. Because I am giving voice for Hindus. I am raising my voice against anti-Hindu terrorists. If 3 sadhus fall, we Hindus should stand up and at least 3,000 people, Hindus should become sannyasis today. Only if we give this kind of response, future is even going to see the remains of Hinduism. if we are going to be terrorized and sadhus are getting lynched, why to become a sadhu? Hindu sadhus are always controversial, why to become a Hindu sadhu? Understand, then the anti-Hindu terrorists are winning their game. The only way to defeat them, only way to survive, if today 3 sadhus are killed and 3,000 Hindus deciding to take Abhat Sannyas and save Hinduism, keep Hinduism alive, that's the only solution. Whether you are going to do it or not, that is the only practical solution. Even though it looks impractical. I will do my work, I will do my tyaga, which I need to do. I will do every tyaga in every possible way to keep this great spiritual Hindu tradition alive. I tell you, death of Hinduism means death of whole spirituality, death of whole life positivity, and death of humanity. It is the Hindu principles keeps humanity alive still. Not just saving Hinduism, it is all about saving the planet Earth, saving humanity. Hindu youth, you have the responsibility to save the humanity for next generation by saving the Hinduism, keeping Hinduism alive. If 3 sadhus are killed, 3,000 Hindu youths, Hindus should take Apat Sannyas. Only then the terrorists who are killing Hindu sadhus and Hindu leaders will decide to back off. Anyhow, we Hindus believe in non-violence. We are not going to go and kill them. But at least take up sannyas like monkhood and keep the Hinduism alive. So we make a statement to them that we are not going to collapse. We may be non-violent. We may not come to kill you, to attack you back. But we are going to keep the Hinduism alive with will, persistence and tyaga. Tyaga is the only antidote for this continuous Hindu holocaust happening all over the world, especially in India. We need to build a large Kailasa ecosystem outside India with the protection, legal protection. That's the only hope we have. Already, Kailasa has signed the treaty with many nations. One nation has even given us a land with autonomous status. We can have our own internal administration, including law and order and judiciary. We are going to do it as per Hinduism, with a Hindu constitution. This is the only hope we have for the future of humanity. By keeping the Hinduism alive and Hindu principles alive, let's keep the humanity alive, at least outside India. That's the only hope we have. I will continue to do Tyaga. And anyone wants to take Apat Sannyas to protect Hinduism, Hindu scriptures, practice and promote Hinduism, you are welcome by the grace of Paramashiva with the protection of Mahakala Bhairava. Already I have got safe haven, safe place for Hindus to gather, live and practice, promote Hinduism and keep it alive and share it with the whole world. Already we have got a property with autonomous status, with all the legal protection and freedom. Whoever wants to apply to live a safe life, serving Hinduism, protecting Hinduism, preserving Hinduism, preaching Hinduism, non-violence, life positive principles and keep the humanity alive. Please apply. Fill the form at nityanandahinduuniversity.org/daily satsang. I have a safe place for you guys outside India where you will not be mob lynched. You can live peaceful Hindu monk life. Live and study Hindu scriptures, practice Hinduism, share Hinduism with the whole world, keep it alive for the next generation. If Hindus are thinking Hinduism is going to be treated fairly or Hinduism is going to be kept alive in India, you are fool. You are brainwashed. Neither Hindu sadhus nor Hindu leaders are going to be treated fairly in India. Wake up to this truth. Even for telling this, I would have been arrested if I was available to Indian police. I am not saying the international mafia, anti-Hindu terrorists who are trying to kill me cannot reach where I am. But I can be very sure of one thing. If they kill me, they have to face the law. They cannot change the narrative into I was mob lynched because I was doing something illegal, immoral and all that. That changing the narrative cannot be done by them. That is the reason I kept myself away from the zone, from their area, their jurisdiction where they can change the whole narrative. Now I am in a place where they cannot change the narrative. If they kill me, they have to face the law. If they eliminate me, they have to face the law. They cannot do this changing the narrative. Oh, because of some illegal, immoral activity, antisocial activity, he got killed. You cannot do that narrative anymore with Nityananda. First of all, I am only surprised with this corona and the lockdown order 144 in India. How did such large size mob gather? First of all, people cannot come out of the home. There is a stay at home order 144, and how they gather in front of police station, such large crowd, and kill a sadhu? How many levels of illegal activity in front of police station? And nobody is questioning all this. No media is questioning all this. just 2-3 people gathering in some temple ritual is becoming a big news. And the priests are getting arrested. If somebody walks into the temple, the priest is getting arrested. And hundreds of people, the terrorist gang, gathers and kills 2 sadhus and 1 grihastha Hindu. 3 people. No media outrage. Media doesn't talk about any of this. And media says thieves are killed. See the whole video. Fortunately, we got this video. Otherwise, media would have morphed and released some other video. I'm only wondering, usually they do a very perfect job. They first release morphed video and make that sadhu illegitimate. They make the story that he is anti-social, anti-humanity and he is a criminal. And then mob lynching. How this time they missed, I am surprised. That's the usual procedure they do, which they tried to do on me. First they name the dog Mad Dog and then shoot it. This time they missed it. The video did not get released. The modus operandi, that usual procedure, I think this time they missed one step. Maybe the new people are getting trained to execute this modus operandi and they missed this one step. Understand, I have not made Kailasa to protect me. I have made Kailasa to protect Hindus, Hindu Sannyas Sampradaya, Hindu Gurukul tradition and Hindu principles, Hindu philosophy, Hindu lifestyle, Hindu spirituality, the only hope for humanity. How they mob lynched my Yogini Sarvanyapita in Gujarat. The Sarvanyapita I made just for girls and women. How they mob lynched and destroyed the whole Sarvanyapita. Just see. Every day this is happening in India. But media twists and gives the absolutely different story. Media and Gujarat police destroyed my Yogini Sarvanyapita in Gujarat, claiming that we are running prostitution and brothel there. Now they don't have an iota of evidence. First of all, we are not doing that. Now they don't have iota of evidence, but they already killed, destroyed the whole ecosystem, whole Sarvanyapita. The ashram, the Sarvanyapita is destroyed. They will not be able to convict my sannyasis, my sannyasinis in court. They don't have evidence, but they are successful in destroying the Sarvanyapita. That's all they want, and they finished it. If I was available, they would have given me to the mob to kill. Unfortunately for them, unfortunately for me, I was not available. So they just finished it with filing a false case. I have seen enough false case. But this Gujarat police filing a false case on me is the worst false case. I never visited that Yogini Sarvanyapita even once. And for years I have not even gone to Gujarat. and I was out of human society at least for last 2 years. And they are filing a false case on me, saying that I don't know what all the sections they put. And they even filed a charge sheet. And still my sannyasinis are stuck in Gujarat without a place to live because of the bail condition that they cannot go out of Ahmedabad jurisdiction. Absolute false case. I have a lot to say. I will continue to say in further satsangs. Now, with this, I bless you all. Let's all radiate with integrity, authenticity, responsibility, enriching, causing, living Shuddhatvaita Saivam. Living and radiating the state, space, powers, being, superconsciousness, and Kailasa of Paramasheva. Paramashivoham. Om Nityananda Paramashivoham. The eternal bliss, Nityananda. Thank you. Be blissful.